I want to touch on an area that you talk about in your book on free will, which was released a few years ago. The sins of the greats, which is, I think, one of the chapters. I remember even when I was at school, people talking to me about biblical characters and issues and saying, these characters, they really messed up. Even almost as if to say, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't have done it. So whether it's the brothers selling Joseph, whether it's King David apparently seemingly having affairs, there's Abraham expelling Hagar and Ishmael. So, and yet at the same time, you say we need to understand that it's not all, you can't take it at face value, basically.
Right.
Can you expand on that for our viewers?
Yes, first of all, we need to be careful with our examples. Abraham expelling Hagar was not a moral failing. It may be a challenge to us to understand. He's not. The others, like King David and his relationships with women, which are indeed targeted by the Torah itself as errors. But when you talk about the sins of the greats, the principle that you need to understand those is that everyone is always battling their own lower self in proportion to their greatness, as we said before. So had you been present with King David at the time when he was contemplating what we call a sin, you wouldn't have understood what was wrong with it. After all, this woman was destined for him. Kabbalistically, he's known as Bathsheba. That marriage resulted in King Solomon, the forerunner of the Mashiach. Not bad for a sin. So there's the thing to understand here is that they were tempted at a level of incredible power, but at their level of subtlety. The Torah brands it and blasts it with the full force of a failure because at their level it was a failure. So the concept is that when you criticize a professional, you criticize him at the level of professional. So when you're watching the football match and the greatest player in the world, right, misses the goal by an inch in incredibly difficult circumstances, and you say failure, idiot, hopeless, useless, you mean at his level. Had you been there, you would have probably been flattened, without even seeing the ball. But of course, he's paid at his level and expected to perform at his level. And therefore, when the famous brain surgeon makes a slip of 0.5 millimeter that you wouldn't have noticed with disastrous consequences, he pays the price at his level. And that's appropriate. But when you criticize him at your level, thinking you're at his level, you're making a serious mistake. And therefore, the sins of the greats, the Torah doesn't pull any punches. It doesn't whitewash their sins at all. But you need the respect to know that they failed at their level of professional challenge. When King David saw Bathsheba, he was not seeing simply a woman in the sense of a casual affair. He saw the Messiah coming out of this relationship. The temptation wasn't a simple fallen, childish, adolescent passion. He saw the future of the world hinging upon this relationship. That's a temptation for a person like that. And the Torah gives you the credit to understand this without being told it explicitly all the way down the line. Had you been present when Adam made his choice, right, with all his calculations?
I wouldn't have made that mistake.
Had you been present, you would have thought it was the greatest mitzvah. So when you study these things, you see they operate at a level of tremendous professional subtlety. But at their level, there's no pulling any punches about that. That's just common sense. When you judge a child in a school, you judge the child against his level. If the teacher compares one child to another with lesser abilities, that's a cruel, unreasonable teacher. The reason for a test is for the teacher to call the child over and to say, for you, that result's not good enough. But to make a child feel inferior because he did worse than another child who's more gifted, that's ridiculous. The Talmud says that in the world to come, you see no one else other than yourself and what you could have been. You're not compared to someone else. That's ridiculous. You are shown yourself, stripped of all facade and illusion, and what you could have been. That's your standard for judgment. And therefore, when you judge a King David or whoever it is, you judge him at the level of what he is and what he could have been, which is cosmic compared to us, but that's the correct standard of judgment.
You have an entire talk devoted to understanding Adam's sin, and Eve's sin of eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In a nutshell, would you be able to elaborate on why you say that he saw it potentially as doing a positive commandment? Because that's very perplexing.
Ollie, this is a long subject to go into.
I'm sorry.
But a key, again, this is not as simple. Obviously, the Torah begins here, and therefore all of human function and morality depends on a correct understanding of this. Another thing to discuss in a couple of minutes. But one of the basic concepts is that he wanted to amplify the range of his free will. His free will was to do almost nothing to reach perfection. And he reasoned that that's an amazing opportunity, but how am I showing how much I love God? by asserting myself against difficulty. Let me take a step back into the void, into the chaos, and rebuild it myself, right? The Talmud goes so far as to say, let us give thanks to our forefathers, because had they not sinned, we would not have been here. So the downside is the misery of 6,000 years of human suffering. The upside is we're here to serve God and do what we have to do. That was the calculation. In absolute godly terms, he made a mistake. But in terms of the result, our being here, all of human history and its great achievements, it wouldn't have happened otherwise. Right. In fact, the Talmud goes so far as to call that aver lishma. That means a sin for the right reason, which sometimes is required. So it was a very, very subtle choice at a cosmic level of greatness by a human being who represented all of mankind with no intrinsic, childish, lecherous materialism at all, simply an intellectual calculation, which at his level of greatness, of course, he got wrong. But it's important to understand what that level is.
Right.
To stay up to date with JTV content, click subscribe here if you're on YouTube and hit the alarm bell. And if you're on Facebook, hit the like button and under following, click see first. If you enjoy watching JTV content and want to help us continue to grow, please consider making a donation to us by clicking here.